Saturn looks like the most beautiful planet in our solar system, but what if it's actually the most terrifying? And the moment you hear it, something feels wrong. Something feels alive. Saturn is the sixth planet from the Sun, the second gas giant, and on the surface, perhaps the most beautiful thing in our solar system, those rings, that golden glow. It looks almost too perfect, like something placed there deliberately. But the longer you study Saturn, the more that beauty starts to feel like a mask, because underneath it and sometimes right on the surface of it, Saturn is doing things that our best science cannot fully explain, things that should not exist, things that have been staring at us for decades while we stand here with no answer. This is not a story about a distant, harmless planet. This is a story about the most unsettling object in our solar system. And by the end of this video, you will never look at those rings the same way again. Let us start with those rings, because what most people picture is not what they actually are. The rings of Saturn are not solid. They are not a shell. They are not one object at all. They are billions of individual particles, ice, dust, fragments of rock, each one traveling its own separate path around Saturn simultaneously. Some particles are as small as a grain of sand. Others are as large as a house. Together, they stretch across hundreds of thousands of kilometers, and yet the entire structure is only about 100 meters thick. The width of a football field, suspended in space, holding a shape so precise it looks engineered. But here is the part that changes everything. Saturn is destroying them. Its magnetic field, one of the most powerful in the entire solar system, does something to the ice particles in those rings. It charges them electrically. Sunlight hits them. Radiation bombards them. Microscopic dust particles collide with them constantly. The moment a particle picks up an electric charge, the magnetic field seizes it. Instead of continuing its orbit, the particle gets pulled directly downward into Saturn's upper atmosphere. Not diverted, not slowed, pulled straight in. And this is not a rare event. This happens every second, all around the planet, simultaneously. An invisible, endless rain of ice falling into Saturn from its own rings. Scientists calculated the rate of loss, and the conclusion was staggering. At this pace, Saturn's rings will be completely gone within 100 million years, perhaps less. What looks like a permanent feature of our solar system is actually disappearing in front of us. Saturn is consuming itself, quietly, constantly, without stopping. Now we move to something that even experienced planetary scientists struggle to explain without pausing. Look at the North Pole of Saturn in satellite imagery, and you will see something that your brain will initially refuse to accept. A hexagon, a geometrically near-perfect six-sided shape, sitting at the top of a gas giant with straight edges and sharp corners, in an atmosphere where everything by every rule of physics should be circular, chaotic, and constantly shifting. This is not a trick of light, not a camera artifact. It is a storm. A storm with a diameter of roughly 30,000 kilometers. Earth's entire diameter is about 12,700 kilometers. This hexagon is more than twice the size of our entire planet, and it sits there rotating with a steadiness that feels almost mechanical. We first saw it in 1981 when Voyager 1 flew past Saturn and returned images showing this impossible shape. The assumption was instrument error. Decades passed. Then, the Cassini spacecraft arrived, settled into orbit, and observed Saturn for years. The hexagon was still there. Same shape, same size, same position, unchanged. Terrestrial hurricanes last days, weeks at most. Even Jupiter's famous Great Red Spot, a storm that has existed for centuries, is visibly shrinking. Saturn's hexagon has not changed in over 40 years of observation, and almost certainly existed long before we ever pointed a camera at it. But the shape is not even the strangest part. When Cassini examined the hexagon in depth, it discovered the storm is not a flat surface pattern. It is a vertical structure, a rotating column of gas plunging hundreds of kilometers deep into Saturn's atmosphere. A tower of wind, geometrically shaped, anchored somewhere in the planet's interior. Then the mission looked above the hexagon, into the upper stratosphere directly overhead, and found a second hexagon sitting on top of the first. Same shape, same orientation, a perfect copy, stacked directly above the original like an upper floor. A multi-story geometric structure rising through the atmosphere of a gas giant. How does this form? The honest answer is that we do not fully know. Saturn has no land masses, no mountains, no continents, none of the surface features that break up and distort weather patterns on Earth. The wind flows completely uninterrupted. Laboratory experiments replicating rotating fluids at different speeds have produced hexagonal shapes, so the geometry itself is physically possible. But those experiments do not explain the stability. They do not explain why this structure has persisted for decades without breaking apart. The leading theory is that heat from Saturn's core acts as a constant energy source, a self-sustaining engine deep inside the planet, keeping the storm permanently alive. But even that is a theory, not a confirmation. And there is one more detail that makes this even stranger. The hexagon has changed color. When Cassini photographed it in high resolution at the start of the mission, it was blue. By the end of the same mission, it had turned yellow. The same storm, the same shape, a completely different color. Possibly seasonal, possibly something else. Nobody knows for certain. And perhaps the most baffling question of all, why does this only exist at the North Pole? Saturn's south pole has a cyclone. Large, powerful, perfectly ordinary, and perfectly round. Same planet, same atmosphere, same physics. And yet only in the north does this geometric impossibility exist. No one has a satisfying answer. Now we arrive at what is, for me, the most deeply unsettling thing about Saturn. Not the disappearing rings, not the hexagon. Something quieter, something invisible. Saturn has a magnetic field. This is not unusual. Earth has one too. But here is where things stop making sense. Earth's magnetic poles are tilted roughly 11 degrees away from its geographic poles, a slight but measurable offset. Jupiter has the same kind of tilt. Every planet with a magnetic field has this deviation. It is not just common, it is expected. It is what physics predicts. Magnetic fields generated by the chaotic movement of conductive fluid deep inside a planet are naturally imperfect, naturally uneven, naturally skewed. Saturn's magnetic field has a deviation of less than 0.1 degrees, less than 1/10 of a single degree from perfect alignment. It is so symmetrical, so precisely ordered that scientists initially looked past it until they understood what that symmetry actually means. To generate a magnetic field, a planet needs what physicists call a dynamo effect. Deep inside Saturn, under pressures so extreme that hydrogen itself transforms into a metallic liquid, conductive fluid churns in constant turbulent motion. This is the engine. And that engine is chaos. That is not a characterization, it is physics. Turbulent, irregular fluid motion produces turbulent, irregular magnetic fields. That is what every known model of planetary dynamos predicts. That is what every other planet in the solar system confirms. And yet Saturn, from inside that same seething chaos, produces a magnetic field of near-perfect symmetry. No wobble, no tilt, no deviation, as if the disorder inside has been somehow filtered, smoothed, erased before it reaches the surface. One theory proposes that a layer of semi-ionized hydrogen above the core acts as a kind of filter, cleaning the signal before it emerges. It is a reasonable idea. It has not been confirmed. We have no way yet of seeing what happens beneath Saturn's visible layers. We are theorizing about an interior we cannot access, trying to explain an output that our existing models say should not be possible. Saturn presents a face of absolute order, perfect symmetry, zero deviation, while physics demands that chaos must be raging inside it. It carries disorder within and projects perfect stillness outward. We have been studying it for decades. We still do not know how. Most planets are interesting. Saturn is something else. It is swallowing its own rings while they orbit it. It has a geometric storm the size of 2 Earths that has existed unchanged for at least half a century. It generates a magnetic field that contradicts our understanding of how magnetic fields are made. 3 separate things, 3 separate mysteries, all on the same planet. Saturn does not look dangerous. It looks beautiful, and maybe that is the most unsettling thing of all.